For 144 glorious days this year, Commander Chris Hadfield orbited the Earth, traveled almost 100 million kilometers, and refocused the world's attention on the sheer wonder of space travel.
This view is magnetic and mesmerizing.
The first Canadian to command the International Space Station, the first Canadian to float freely in space, and the first person, it's believed, to release a music video filmed in space.
Ground control to Major Tom.
That little gem, by the way, got a nod from David Bowie himself. Chris became the most celebrated astronaut since Neil Armstrong, whose moon landing back in 1969 was an inspiration to the young Chris growing up in Milton, Ontario. Now, while aboard the ISS, where he and his crew performed more than 130 science experiments, Chris took spectacular photos of our country and our planet. But what separates his experience was that he shared them all with us for his nearly 1 million Twitter followers. And now he's back on Earth with a book to boot. We'll ask him what it really feels like and what you can really learn from floating in space. Commander Chris Hadfield!
Good to be here.
Yeah, so great to see you.
Thanks very much.
What a treat. I mean, I had to imagine, as much as your experience was so wonderful for you and the science that you were able to do, did you have any idea what it meant to a lot of us who are following you down here?
Sort of theoretically, yeah. It was, I mean, it is such a magnificent experience at so many levels, but it's so busy. And I sort of, I could see numbers and I could, you know, get a rough idea that there were a lot of people paying attention, but...
You went up to space with 20,000 Twitter followers, dude. Now you got near 1 million, right? That's unbelievable.
That's a lot, yeah, I know. But I was just, you know, focused so hard on trying to get the work done, paying attention, the view out the window, you wouldn't believe. And then I'd come in at night and check, you know, email and stuff in my little sleep pod and go, wow, there's a whole bunch of people paying attention. That's cool, that's great. But it was just sort of one of the many things that was happening.
What's sleep like up there?
It's like everybody dreams sleep ought to be, in that you, the straight reality of it is you can just relax every muscle in your body. You're floating in space inside a sleeping bag, and it has like 2 shoelaces that tie it to the wall. So this sleeping bag is just sort of floating there. You float yourself down into it, zip it up, pull the little doors closed, like thunk, thunk, because they're little like saloon doors on your sleep pod, and then flick the light off, and then you just relax. And your arms float up, and your legs float up, and your head tips forward, and then everything is relaxed. It's just, it's a wonderful, you'd like it. It's a wonderful way to sleep.
But it sounds like it's almost womb-like.
I don't remember exactly.
But me neither, but I've seen enough movies about how the babies are made and then after. But no, there's this idea of just kind of, you know...
When you see pictures of the fetus in the womb, that's the exact position you're in.
Right.
That completely relaxed, almost a developmental state.
You've seen the sorts of things that we only ever see in pictures or online, and most of the time we've only ever seen them because you posted them. But there's this idea of what might happen to your own psychology when you see it. This is an old school clip. Somebody talking about response to this.
So I turned to the local university and asked them to help me with what I saw. And when they came back to me a few weeks later and said, well, in the ancient literature, we found a description called Salvakapa Samadhi. And they said that means that you see things as you see them with your eyes, but you experience them emotionally and viscerally as with ecstasy and a sense of total unity and oneness. And I said, well, that's exactly what the experience was.
That to me... So that's Ed Mitchell. And again, because I don't know all the details of the science, what I found so fascinating about your experience is just on a cellular level, that experience, the overview effect.
Yeah, it is such an experience at so many levels. Just straight at the awareness level, when you open your eyes and look at the world, it is as if this huge living thing next to you is very deliberately showing you its secrets. It's like You thought that last orbit around was interesting? Look at this time. Look at this. Watch this. Just look at this. And so you're getting that visually, but then subconsciously, you know, you're soaking it up as well. And every night as you're drifting off to sleep, you're trying to convince yourself, how can I possibly be here amongst all this? And how am I going to rationalize this? And now when I go outside and I watch the space station go over, you know, this star going across the horizon, I still... you could see sort of both the peace and the confusion that's in Ed Mitchell's mind, because to try and integrate that experience and that visual thing going over top of my head with just regular life back on Earth, I'm still not completely settled with it.
This is something else. What is the support group in place to go and share that?
We have, we actually call them psych support. We have psychological support people. They're the ones who put the guitar on the space station for me. They try to anticipate the potential effects that it might have on you and give you as many links as possible. They're largely responsible for having, you know, the Twitter on board, is that level of technology where I could talk to people directly, where I could phone my wife, talk to my son in China, you know, where we could do that, where I could phone Neil Young and talk to Neil Young on the phone.
No big deal.
Have a video. And I had a nice talk with Neil about the experience. So that really helped a lot, that you felt very connected, even though you were physically so isolated.
To see that Canadarm was a really, like, it's ingrained in my memory. I'm 41, it's my whole idea of the space world. I see that little symbol.
Canadians need to be proud of the Canadarm. You go through the quick history of the thing. We started out with an early satellite that had this pathetic little arm on it called STEM. From that, we got an invitation to build the arm for the space shuttle. That arm, I mean, it made the Hubble telescope work. It did multiple satellites. It did wonderful work on the shuttle. That got us the invitation to build the arm on the space station, which built the whole space station. We built the space station. And from that, it built the research arm that's in the end, which is SPDM, which the granddaughter of that is working in the Foothills Hospital in Calgary, which does brain surgery inside an MRI machine with the surgeon sitting outside using robotic controllers. And that's being used in hospitals around the world. And that arm is on the $5 bill that comes out in November. That arm has been huge for our country, culturally and scientifically and technically, and everybody should be hugely proud of that.
It's the best arm in the business. Stick around, more with Chris Hadfield after this.
All right, coming up.
Energized.
One commander to another. We've got Kirk. That is to say, we've got Shatner, and he's got a real question for Chris.
You guys can sing if you like.
The sons came from across the land to help them through.
It was a while ago.
And last night in the kitchen was the missus' dream come true. Though he knows what he's doing, it doesn't make sense to him. He'll never reap all that he's sown.
20 years ago, man.
That was a while ago. That's nice to see. I haven't seen that in a long time.
This is going to the 5th estate, I think you did that, right?
Yeah, nice.
I was thinking about your family. You have been more honest about it than I've seen other people be about it, and I think your choice to go honor your wife's promise you made your wife now.
Yeah.
Did you, I don't know, do you feel like you're a ghost in your family? To accomplish the goal you had to accomplish, man, there's almost no way you could have done both. Be the guy that was there and be the guy getting ready for this.
I hope I wasn't a ghost in my family. I woke up every single morning going, okay, today I'm going to do a little better than I did yesterday. And these are my objectives for the day. These are my objectives at work, and these are my objectives at home. I'm going to try and get this stuff done. And then I go to bed that night and go, ugh. You know, the false hopes of the morning sacrificed on the altar of reality for the day, right?
There's a quote from your son, which is so fascinating. I'm sure you've read this in when he published in the Globe and Mail.
Oh.
When he was talking about, you know, if somebody loses their father or their parent, then the death is private. But he said, if my father dies doing his job, then his death won't be. I won't just have to watch him explode before my eyes. I'll have to see him explode on TV over and over and over again.
Yeah.
What did you think when you read that?
When the Columbia accident happened, you know, that was in 2003. I'd already flown in space twice. I'd been a test pilot before. You know, death is awful, but it's not abnormal. But for them, somehow they'd been young enough that my first 2 flights, they thought I was immortal, I guess. And it was only Columbia that really struck home to them that I do a very dangerous thing by riding a rocket ship. And they were terrified, which I didn't realize. They were terrified to watch me ride the Soyuz rocket up the 3rd time, because now they were old enough to understand the consequences and the risks involved. And my wife has expressed it so well. She says, you know, if you die, you're going to die sometime anyway. If you die at this thing, you love what you're doing, it'll be an awful thing, but we can deal with it. We have life insurance, you know, we'll get through this. But what I don't want is every year on the anniversary of your death for someone to come to my door and say, so, how do you feel now? So, it's been a nice round number of years. How bad do you feel now? Yeah. She said, I don't want to be defined by something that happened to you 5 years ago, like the Challenger spouses are, or like the Columbia spouses are. And she said, if you die, I can deal with that. But the rest of that, I really don't want to have to deal with. So, thank you for not dying.
Boy, you must have a hell of an insurance policy for her to be so relaxed, you know? All right, stick around. A surprise for Commander Hadfield when we come back.
Chris, Bill Shatner. We talked on the phone while you were flying overhead, and I was relaxed in my bathrobe on a lounge chair in Los Angeles. But now, and I asked you several questions, and you answered them, and you even invited me up to your cottage, and I've been there. You don't know it, but it's a wonderful cottage, and I left everything pretty much intact. The question I want to ask you is, what were you thinking as this engine is going off and this fire and chaos underneath you, and you're beginning to accelerate up, and you know you got 3 stages, and you know it's friction on the air and debris and ice crystals. What were you thinking, man? Why? What did you think? Why am I doing this? The kids need me. Chris, what were you thinking?
Thank you, Bill Shatner.
That's funny. You know, the conversation he and I had from the spaceship was really good. I didn't know he was sitting in his bathrobe, but he had thought about it. He had put together a bunch of really interesting questions, and he wasn't interested in talking about the past. He wanted to talk about, you know, the experience itself and what it meant for me and what it meant for him. And it was a really interesting time to compare notes with him. I was really pleased to talk with the man.
What were you thinking through the chaos?
Its launch is the most dangerous thing I've ever done. 6 months, well, 5 months in space, and half of the risk of 5 months in space is in the first 9 minutes. And something we say in the astronaut business is there is no problem so bad that you can't make it worse. So we focus really hard on not making that happen. And
Oh, that's so good, man.
yeah, an important little philosophy to keep in mind, right?
The thing about, is there life? But for humans, I think sometimes it's not just, is there life in other worlds? Is there consciousness in other worlds?
Yeah, well, sometimes I wonder if there's consciousness here, right? But...
Well put. Well put.
Or at least conscience. But the odds are inevitable. We took the Hubble telescope and stared at the darkest part of the southern hemisphere for like a month and developed the image to see what we could see where we'd never seen anything before, and it was full of galaxies. And each galaxy is millions of stars, and within the last 10 years or so, we've started to be able to see planets, directly see planets around other stars. We've basically shown ourselves that every star has planets around it. And there's an unlimited number of stars. So to think that we're the only life in the universe is just sort of like thinking that we're the center of the universe. I think we just haven't figured out how to prove it yet.
If you're in a bar, 2 in the morning, you stayed later than you should, and there's a bunch of guys around you and they're a little drunk and maybe they're religious and start getting into the God thing with you, what do you like in that conversation?
I try and not be in that conversation, actually.
Yeah, but you're watching the game, it's going late, it's a West Coast feed.
Astronaut walks into a bar. Yeah.
Do you think about spirituality and that sort of thing?
You know, on orbit, we talk about it all the time. How could you not? You know, within the astronaut corps, there are a lot of us, people from all around the world. There's every religion pretty much within all of the astronauts from around the world. And it's one of the things we talk about. And you look at the world, and it looks so rare and precious. It is really hard to think that it's random.
Yeah.
But the most important thing, I think, is that we, on orbit, we really respect each other's beliefs. Beliefs are what got us there. And whatever belief system gave you the strength to do all the things you needed to do in order to be one of the first humans to see the world that way, that belief system is a good one, and we really respect each other's up there.
Man, I got to tell you, we're lucky enough to interview people every day here, but you're one of the guys I'm most excited to ever talk about. What a pleasure.
Thanks for inviting me to the Red Show.
Commander Chris Hadfield. The book is a must-read. It's An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. Chris Hadfield, everybody. We'll be right back.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you.